Okay, so the book that I read was called The Things That They Carried. And to summarize this book, it was about the main character. His name was William O'Brien. And basically, William O'Brien, he had a very good life when he was younger. And kind of, I think his life kind of led him to be a writer. So, for example, when he was younger, his dad had the New York Times and he would always read it. And then once he got to college, he kind of figured out that writing was his passion and he kind of pursued that through college. And then as he graduated from college, it was about the time that the Vietnam War was starting. And then once he graduated, he got accepted into Harvard. So this was like a very big opportunity for him because he got accepted. And then once he got accepted into Harvard, that's when he got drafted into the war. And he was very upset about this because he didn't agree with the war. He thought it was pointless, and his political views were against the war, and he actually did everything he could to avoid anything pertaining to the war. So he actually was even thinking about crossing the border over to Canada so that he could avoid getting drafted into the war. But because this was very important to his family and he didn't want to embarrass them or anything like that, he decided, okay, like I'm going to take it and I'm just going to go to Vietnam and serve my time there. So, and then once he got to Vietnam, this is where like I think he gets like very descriptive of the war and kind of just describes like everything he went through. And so first thing that he does is that the title of the book is called The Things That They Carried. So he describes everything that they were carrying, which is like physical things at the time. So for example, their guns, their backpacks, some people even had M&Ms, just to like kind of describe like the atmosphere of the war and stuff like that. And then he was also in a group called the Alpha Company. And this was the people that he was fighting with and like his army brothers, I guess you would say. And through that, the story just kind of tells like the stories of each person. And I think what kind of impacted me the most was when people in the story would die. So it's like you would know their story and you would know their background, and next thing you know, they're dead. And I think that's what kind of impacted me from when I was reading the story, but also gave me an insight about how the war actually went down. So an example of this would be one of his friends. His name was Kurt Lemon. And Kurt was actually like on his way to the bathroom. He was describing this in the story. He was on his way to the bathroom and he was like shot in the head. And then from Kurt Lemon being shot, their lieutenant had felt very guilty, like that Kurt Lemon's death was his fault. Like he felt very guilty about it. And so like even all the way through the war all the way to like the end of the war, he felt very guilty about Kurt Lemon's death, and he felt like it was his fault that he had died. So I think that's one of the things that like weighed very heavy on me. And then another one was between these two friends named Dave and Lee, and the two had made a pact with each other that if one of them were to get wounded, the other would shoot them so that they could have a quick death. Now that already just I think speaks volumes, because it's like you have to shoot your best friend. Like I think that's hard for anyone to go through. So, sorry, I wrote down notes. There's just a situation where Lee gets hurt, and then Dave has the opportunity to shoot Lee, but when it actually comes down to it, Lee was saying like, please don't shoot me, like I know we made this pact, but please don't shoot me or whatever. And then Dave actually doesn't shoot him because he's like, okay, this isn't what you wanted, and I don't want you to personally die, but like if you did want to die, I would shoot you. So I think that's like kind of something that weighed heavy on me. And I think as William O'Brien is just describing the war, it's just showing that like these soldiers went through so much during the Vietnam War. Like they witnessed everything, like for example, the My Lai massacre. Like that was something that William gave a description of, and like everything he experienced, and just like how the war had affected them negatively, more negatively than positively, I would say. And so one of the things about that I would say about the title that really like made sense to me is that the title is called The Things That They Carried. So and although in the book he describes it as physical things, like I said, like either their book bags or their candy or their guns. That's like the physical things. But when you really dig down deep into it, it's like the things that they carried after the war. For example, guilt. Like I said, like Lemon had guilt like years after the war. Not Lemon. The lieutenant had guilt after the war. The fact that Lemon had died, and I think that's the thing that he was trying to get at, is that even though the war is over, it's not over for these soldiers who fought in the war at all. Like, they are still going through so many traumatic things in their head that like it's still affecting them today. So I think that this war was very gruesome and it was very exhausting for soldiers, especially even after they got back, because they just experienced so much, whether it was death, whether it was guilt, like just seeing all that kind of comes back home to you. So although the war was over, the things that they still carried over with them to America, I would say. So I think that's like the overall like message, I would say, of the book was that even though the war is over, they still carry things on with them that still impacted their daily lives and how they lived their lives moving forward.